This is the hinge for the grinder, if you like, kind of a tilting table. So it'll be bolted onto the side of the grinder. The grinder will be tipped horizontally, and then the bolt will be tightened up there just to lock it in position. It's quite simple really, just a base. The base, I'm going to bolt it down to its own table. Like I said, this grinder's having its own kind of workstation, so that will be bolted down to there. And the back of the bench, or the back of its table, the motor hangs down, so the motor will swing. The motor will swing, you know, out the back as it tilts. So yeah, that's it. That's the tilting table. The bolt's just tightened up, and it's just simply a piece of studding with some 12mm holes drilled straight the way through, just to act as a hinge. Something else I made the other day was this little circle cutter, and it's utilised one of these magnets that I've got, which have a 6mm hole in the centre. So I cut a bit of 6mm rod, put that in, and I used this to cut these slots in that there with the plasma cutter. And I just made a little rod and welded a spring onto the end of it, bit of spring wire, tempered it and respringed it again, and it's just adjustable in and out to cut smaller or larger circles. And the torch head or the plasma torch head, it just locks into there like that. So, and it just holds it exactly the right height off the steel what you're working on, holds it about 1 mil above it. When I cut the slot out for the plating head, how did I do that? That's right, I made this up, and that hole in there, that took the nozzle of the torch, of the plasma cutter, sorry, that took the nozzle of the plasma, and then that little pin, well, the pin went in there, and I used it like that on the steel with the plasma in there to try and cut the arches. But it was a horrible mess when I'd finished. It took me a long time to clean it up with a file, that. But afterwards I realised that because the tip is going through there, the plasma tip, the air can't flow properly around this piece of steel. So the air it kind of can't blow, because it's, you know, that piece of metal's restricting the airflow, blowing the plasma, you know, plasma melts it, the airflow blows the steel through, but that was restricting the airflow, so it was kind of a big snotty bubbling mess underneath. So that's the go. I made that, so there's no restrictions, there's nothing stopping it, and it was superb. So that's how I cut that, that's how I cut the slot in there. The plasma. Brick acid, absolutely brilliant at getting rid of mill scale. Put the steel in a tray, pour some of that brick acid on top of it. Within 15 minutes it's just literally dissolved the mill scale and it's gone. Piece of steel here that I've just put in the tray, you see it's perfectly clean, beautiful, and that's the same piece covered in mill scale. The trouble with this stuff is you don't get a clean weld when you're trying to weld on it, because if you use a flat disc and try and sand it off, it just kills the flat discs, it kills sandpaper, it clogs it up, something chronic. So I recommend that brick acid, it's good stuff. It's just taking it clean off back down to the steel again. Well, I've got some paint on grinder now. It's all more or less finished really. There's some little bits and pieces I do, like making handles for the arm holders, making some little turny handly things. But first of all, before I do anything else, I'm just going to bolt on the hinge, and it goes on here on this side. I want to get that done now. So I've just bolted on the hinging mechanism. There's just 40mm bolts, and I tapped the side of the grinder and screwed them in, and there's one bolt there that just happens to go straight through the whole grinder on the plate. I might have gone a bit overboard with the bolts, but you never know, do you? So I'm just going to fit this now and put the bolt through there. The actual plate is just touching on a couple of heads of them bolts. I'll just grind them off. I think that should get it. It was just catching on that little bolt there. Didn't really allow for these bolts when I thought about this, but yeah, that's got it. You're good, you're good. Right, I'll bolt that up. I'm putting a couple of nuts on each on the inside of that just to lock the whole bar in place and just add a little bit of tension, and then two nuts on the end to clamp it all up. I suppose the big test of this is to see if it works. Yeah, bit of a success. It's actually binding on one of the bolts there just a little tiny bit. That little bolt is just binding on the bracket. It's only about 1 mil, so I will just grind that off and she's good. So I'll just show you some other bits now, tighten that up. And I'll spin it around. I got the spring mechanism mounted, and that is simply a cover which I made, and that sits over the channel. And I've made this cover to stop any bits of dust going in there and fouling up the runners, or where the tool arms go in and out. Now if I'd had some thicker bar, I could have tapped them bolts straight into the thicker bar, and I probably wouldn't have needed that top. And the same there, but all I had was that 10mm stuff, 10 by 40, so that's why I kind of bolted through instead of drilling and tapping the sides. It's arguably better this way, but anyway, it just means I put that on there, and I drilled a small hole in that and I put a bolt in there, and the bolt just happens to sit inside that spring, which is the it's actually the spring off an air rifle, an old air rifle spring, and that's just had a bolt welded onto the top of it and a nut just welded into there. So the spring is also kind of adjustable, if you like, up and down for tension or not, as the case may be. And that just literally sits in there, and that's the tensioner. Works really well. Let's find a spanner for that plate now. And put my belt on. Actually, you don't need very much tension on this at all, because it sets that belt up pretty tight. be a bit tight, that. Nearly play a tune on it. Oh, I've just got to tighten that bolt up there. But yeah, it works pretty well, that. So I'm pleased with that. The plating head itself is finished. I had no angle iron, so I had to make a couple of 10mm plate brackets, and the bolt tipped and threaded into there. The head now tilts. Yeah, the head now tilts, so I can use the actual front roller to grind on. I won't bother putting the belt on, but you get the general idea. There's just an infinite amount of room there, and I think that is it, is it? That's it there. Yeah, so I can actually use that now as a grinding surface. I can actually grind on that front roller as well, which I'm pleased about. I'm making another plating head, and it will have 3 different size rollers on the front of it. I think I said before, I'd like one about 3/4 of an inch, I'd like one about an inch, and then one probably 1.25 inches, and it will have 3 on the same head, and I'll be able to rotate them similar to that and just lock them off for whichever one I want to use. I've still got to put the actual face on there for the plate, for the plating, and I've got some 80 CRV2 7mm which I'm going to cut up, and that is going to sit on the front of there, and the plating there is adjustable. Yeah, it is adjustable that way and that way, backwards and forwards. I've drilled holes in there, and then I've filed them so they're actual slots, so everything there is movable. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to keep this on this bench, because it's a fair old lump now. It's a fair old lump of weight. I've no idea what it weighs, but it's got to be 80-90 kilos now. So the next thing to do is to get the motor wired up. I'm probably not going to be able to build the bench for this because Christmas is going to get in the way. I haven't got any steel to build the bench to mount this on, which is a bit disappointing. Unless I can get out tomorrow somewhere and just go and pick up some box section, but most places are shut down now. So I may just go and pay a visit to a few friends and see if anyone's got any box section steel lying around I can borrow.